What if I told you the life you're living right now isn't actually yours? That the routines you follow, the decisions you make, even the thoughts running through your head might not be your own. That uneasy feeling you've had for years, that quiet sense that something is off but you can't quite put your finger on it, isn't your imagination. It's a warning, a signal, a flicker of your soul trying to break through the noise. Think about it. How often do you wake up, go through your day, do everything you're supposed to do, and still feel like you're wearing a mask, like you're performing a role in a play you never auditioned for? That's not normal. That's not life. That's captivity wearing the costume of comfort. From the moment you could walk and talk, you were handed a script. Be polite. Go to school. Get a good job. Don't question the rules. And so you memorized your lines. You rehearsed them until they felt natural. But deep down, a part of you always knew you were faking it. Because this world didn't feel like home. Because the goals they told you to chase never filled that void. Because even when you did everything right, something inside still whispered, "This isn't who you are." You were never meant to live this way. You didn't come here to be another worker in a system designed to drain your spirit. You didn't incarnate into this life just to survive. You came here to remember, to reclaim the truth that's been buried beneath decades of conditioning. But the problem is, the longer you live a lie, the more convincing it becomes. You start mistaking familiarity for truth. You start mistaking comfort for purpose. And one day you wake up and realize you've forgotten who you really are. And it wasn't an accident. The truth is, this forgetting was engineered, carefully, systematically, and globally. What you've been taught to call normal life is actually a carefully constructed environment designed to shut you down spiritually before you ever have the chance to wake up. From the moment you're born, society begins its work. You're given a name before you can speak, assigned a nationality, a religion, a gender identity. You're labeled, categorized, and conditioned. As a child, you naturally connect to unseen realms. You imagine freely. You speak your mind. You ask questions that cut through adult illusions. But instead of being nurtured, you're redirected, scolded, silenced. You're told to stop daydreaming, to stop being weird, to grow up. And little by little, the door between you and your soul begins to close. By the time you're in school, the system is already doing its job flawlessly. You're not taught to think, you're taught to remember, not to question, but to obey. You're taught how to be a productive member of society, not how to be a fulfilled human being. You're flooded with information, but starved of meaning. You're trained to fear failure, to crave approval, to compete, compare, conform, and worst of all, you're taught to dismiss your inner voice. That gentle whisper that tells you there's more to life than this becomes background noise, drowned out by grades, deadlines, expectations, and the endless need to prove your worth to others. But worth isn't something you prove, it's something you remember. As you grow older, the programming evolves, but never loosens its grip. The media tells you what to desire. Culture tells you how to behave. Advertising tells you what happiness looks like, usually in the form of things you can't afford but are taught to crave. You're bombarded by distractions that keep you looking outward so you never stop to look within. You start to believe that if you just work hard enough, make enough money, get enough followers, buy the right car, marry the right person, then maybe, just maybe, you'll finally feel whole. But the truth is, you were never broken. You were just disconnected. And that disconnection is not accidental. It was manufactured. Because a soul that remembers its power becomes impossible to control. A person who knows who they are doesn't bow to systems, doesn't seek validation, doesn't settle for mediocrity. That person becomes dangerous, not violent, but free. And freedom is the one thing this world fears more than anything. That's why everything around you is designed to make you forget. Forget your past lives, forget your true purpose, forget your divine nature. Because if you remembered, if even for a moment you could see the full picture, everything would change. You'd stop playing the game, you'd walk away from the script, and you'd finally begin the journey of becoming who you really are. Your soul is always speaking to you, always. The problem is, no one ever taught you how to listen. You were trained to trust logic, evidence, authority. You were told that if something can't be measured or proven, it isn't real. But your soul doesn't speak in facts and figures. It speaks in patterns, in dreams, in that quiet gut feeling you keep brushing off. Every coincidence that felt too perfect, every moment of déjà vu that made your heart skip, every time you thought of someone and they suddenly reached out, these aren't accidents. These are signals, messages from the part of you that never forgot, the part that's been waiting patiently for you to notice. And the more you ignore them, the louder they get. At first, they come as gentle nudges, a strange dream, a repeated number, a book that falls off the shelf at the right time. But if you keep dismissing them, they grow stronger. You start feeling restless, unfulfilled. You feel like you're missing something vital, but you can't name it. That's not anxiety. That's your soul trying to wake you up. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how perfect your life looks from the outside. If you're living out of alignment with your true essence, your soul will rebel, not out of punishment, but out of love. It wants you to remember. That's why you start seeing patterns you can't explain. That's why you feel like you're being guided towards something, even if you don't know what it is. That's why you can't shake the sense that your life is supposed to mean more than this. These aren't illusions, these are breadcrumbs. And the more you pay attention, the more they multiply. The universe doesn't waste effort. If signs are showing up in your life, it's because you're ready to decode them. But most people never do, because they were taught to ignore the invisible. You were told dreams are just your brain processing memories. You were told numbers repeating are just coincidence. You were told there's no such thing as signs, just randomness. But look closer. How is it that certain dreams feel more real than waking life? How is it that specific numbers follow you, showing up on clocks, receipts, license plates over and over again? How is it that strangers say things to you, out of nowhere, that answer questions you haven't even spoken out loud? You can call it coincidence, or you can call it what it really is, guidance. And the strangest part, the more lost you feel, the closer you actually are. Because the moment your soul knows you're ready to wake up, it will do everything it can to break the illusion. That's why the most painful experiences in life, loss, heartbreak, isolation, often carry the deepest spiritual messages. They shatter your routine, rip away your distractions, and leave you face to face with yourself. In those moments, you're forced to confront what you've been avoiding, the truth that your soul has outgrown the small version of life you've been told to accept. And when you can finally sit in that discomfort without running, you'll notice something miraculous. The signs were never far away, they were all around you. You just had to stop looking outside for answers and start feeling your way in. There's a reason you've always felt like a stranger here, like you don't quite fit, like you're watching life happen through a window, always on the outside looking in. Maybe you've tried to explain it to people before, only to be met with confusion or dismissiveness. Maybe you've stopped trying altogether, but deep down, you know what I'm talking about. That constant sense that you're playing along with a reality that was never meant for you, that you're participating in something you don't fully agree with. You look around and see people who seem content with the surface, career, gossip, possessions, status, and you wonder, how can they be satisfied with so little? But it's not about arrogance. You're not better than anyone else. You're just wired differently, because your soul remembers something they've forgotten. You came here with a deeper awareness, a spiritual sensitivity, a memory of home that this world cannot satisfy. That's why material success doesn't excite you the way it's supposed to. That's why casual conversation often feels exhausting. That's why you crave depth, silence, truth, things that can't be bought or performed. You've tried to blend in. You've tried to play the role, but no matter how hard you try, something inside you keeps resisting. That resistance is sacred. It's the part of you that refuses to go fully asleep, and that makes you a threat to the illusion. Because when one person wakes up, they carry a frequency that makes others question. That's why this feeling of alienation is so powerful. It's not a flaw, it's a marker, a sign that you're not from here. Not in the ordinary sense. You didn't come here to fit in. You came here to anchor a different kind of consciousness. And the reason you've always felt like something was missing isn't because you're broken. It's because you remember wholeness. You remember what it feels like to be fully connected, to live without fear, to love without condition, to create without limit. You remember. And though that memory may feel like a faint whisper now, it's enough. Because once the soul begins to remember, nothing can stop it. No amount of distraction, no external pressure, no social expectation. The search for truth becomes non-negotiable. You stop asking for permission, you stop chasing validation, and you start asking the only question that matters: who am I, really? Everything else begins there. And the answer doesn't come from books or beliefs, it comes from within, from the remembering, from the sacred rebellion of a soul that refuses to stay asleep. And that rebellion is just beginning. There's a reason this information was hidden. A reason why, for thousands of years, it was only passed down in secret, from teacher to student, in whispered conversations under stars or in the silence of sacred temples. The knowledge you're about to receive wasn't forbidden because it was dangerous in itself. It was forbidden because of what it could unlock in you. Because when a human being remembers the full truth of who they are, they become uncontrollable. They stop playing by the rules of limitation. They start operating from a frequency that's immune to fear, lack, and manipulation. And once that happens, the illusion begins to collapse, not just for the individual, but for everyone around them. Long before modern religions, long before organized belief systems, long before society taught you what to think, there were those who remembered. Mystics in ancient Egypt, rishis in India, shamans in the Amazon, alchemists in Europe, all of them knew the same secret, that human beings were never meant to live blind. They weren't waiting to die to meet the divine. They became the divine through remembrance. They weren't praying for salvation, they were activating memory. They weren't hoping for miracles, they were performing them. And the way they did it wasn't magic, it wasn't fantasy, it was precise, methodical, ancient science of the soul. These practices were so effective, so transformative, that those in power did the only thing they could: erase them. Or worse, twist them, hide them beneath religious dogma, lock them behind ritual and hierarchy, reduce them to superstition or fairy tales. So today, most people have no idea this technique even exists, and yet it still lives, hidden in the spaces between myths and metaphors, encoded in symbols, preserved in fragments by those who refuse to forget. But here's what most people don't realize. This sacred method doesn't require temples or robes or years of study. It doesn't need a priest, a guru, or anyone to mediate it, because the soul already knows. Your soul already remembers. It's been waiting for the moment when your mind becomes quiet enough, your heart becomes open enough, your intention becomes strong enough for the remembering to begin, and that moment is now. The ancient ones all described the same stages. First comes the restlessness, the sense that your life doesn't quite fit, that the identity you've built doesn't feel real anymore. Then comes the signs, dreams that seem more vivid than waking life, repeated numbers, strange synchronicities, a series of coincidences that become too precise to ignore. After that, the soul begins to lead. You start being drawn to different books, people, places. Old desires fade, new questions rise. You begin to crave silence, solitude, nature. You feel a pull to go inward, sometimes without knowing why. That's the soul beginning to reclaim the space it was once pushed out of. And this is where the ritual begins, not in some dramatic ceremony, but in the quiet decision to stop running, to stop performing, to stop living someone else's version of your life. You sit down, you breathe, you close your eyes, and for the first time in a long time, you stop trying to be anything. Because remembering doesn't happen through effort, it happens through presence, through stillness, through allowing. The ancient technique is simple but not shallow. It's not about visualization or imagination, it's about alignment. A breath so intentional it shifts your entire frequency. A sequence of sounds that activate dormant memory. A space of silence where your soul is finally able to speak. And when you begin, things start to move. Not always in a way you can explain, but in a way you can feel. A sense of expansion, a deep calm, or waves of emotion that seem to come from nowhere. Sometimes you'll see images, faces you've never met but recognize, places you've never been but remember. Other times, it's just a certainty, a knowing, a connection so strong it can't be named, only lived. This process isn't about learning who you are. It's about becoming who you've always been beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the performance. And once you remember, things begin to fall away. Old habits, old identities, old beliefs that once felt solid suddenly seem hollow, and in their place, something new arises, not because you built it, but because it was always there. A sense of self that doesn't depend on approval, achievement, or survival. A power that doesn't dominate, but radiates. A love that isn't earned, but is your natural state. And here's where most people hesitate, because remembering comes with responsibility. Once you remember, you can't pretend anymore. You can't go back to sleep. You can't keep playing small, living safe, hiding your light. You'll feel it in your body when you try. You'll feel it in your chest, your throat, your gut. The soul will not allow you to live a lie once you've tasted truth. And this is the ultimate shift. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What am I here to become?" You stop chasing purpose and start embodying it. You stop reacting to life and begin creating it from the inside out. This is why the ritual was hidden. Not because it's complicated, but because it's too simple to control, too powerful to profit from, too pure to package. You don't need a middleman. You don't need a label. You just need to remember. And when you do, your entire reality begins to respond. You'll notice people treat you differently. Some will be drawn to you without knowing why. Others will be triggered by you because your remembering reflects the part of them that's still asleep. But that doesn't matter. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to live in full alignment with the truth of your soul. And the truth is this: you are not broken. You are not lost. You are not incomplete. You are a timeless, powerful, multi-dimensional being who temporarily forgot who you were in order to remember from the inside out. And now that the remembering has begun, nothing will ever be the same again. There comes a moment, quiet, unexpected, when everything begins to shift. You might not even notice it at first. It might be something small. You hear a song that feels like a message, or you get goosebumps from a conversation that shouldn't have felt so important. You look at the clock and it says 11:11. You see the same symbol again and again. At first, you brush it off, but then it happens again and again. And suddenly, the world doesn't feel random anymore. It feels orchestrated, like something, some intelligence is gently guiding you. And it is. What you're experiencing is not luck. It's not a phase. It's not a glitch. It's the moment your soul steps back into the driver's seat and says, "I'm here now." From this point on, life stops being a flat, linear experience. You start to notice layers. You feel energy in conversations. You sense people's emotions before they speak. You pick up on patterns, signs, vibrations. You can't explain how you know things. You just do. It's as if your perception widens. The things you used to tolerate suddenly feel unbearable. The places you once fit into now feel foreign. The relationships that used to define you start to dissolve. Not because something's wrong, but because you've changed frequencies. You've risen to a different level of awareness, and not everything can follow you there. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds gradually. It's not a light switch. It's a sunrise. One day, you wake up and realize you're more sensitive to your environment. Certain foods, certain sounds, certain conversations drain you. Other things like silence, nature, or honest connection start to nourish you in ways you never imagined. Your intuition sharpens. Your dreams become vivid. Synchronicities accelerate. You think of someone and they call. You speak your truth, and the world rearranges to match your vibration. You're not just living anymore, you're co-creating. You realize the universe isn't out there somewhere, separate from you. It's inside you. It's been responding to your energy all along. But with this new awareness comes a strange loneliness. Because now you see the illusion more clearly. You notice how much of the world is asleep. People chasing distractions, clinging to roles, performing lives they don't even enjoy. And for a while you might feel like you're walking between worlds, too awake to go back, not yet fully sure how to move forward. That in-between space is sacred. It's the threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. Don't rush through it. Stay with it, listen, watch, allow the old to fall away no matter how familiar it feels, because what's coming isn't just better, it's true. You'll start to feel it in your body, a sense of inner alignment, a resonance. You'll walk into a room and instantly feel whether you belong or not. You'll meet someone and just know there's a karmic thread there. You'll hear a phrase that unlocks a memory you didn't know you had. It's not mental, it's energetic. Your soul is restoring the memory that was always yours. And as that memory returns, something else begins to rise. Your power. Not the kind of power that dominates or controls, but the kind that radiates. The power of being exactly who you are, unapologetically. The power of living without masks. The power of saying no to everything that drains your light, and yes to everything that expands your truth. This is when you stop chasing purpose. You stop asking what your mission is, because you realize you are the mission. You were born encoded with a frequency that the world needs, not because you're special, but because you're authentic. Your authenticity is the portal. When you live in full alignment with your truth, you become a living key that unlocks awakening in others, not through preaching, not through convincing, but simply by being, and people will feel it. They'll sense something in you that they've forgotten in themselves. That's how the remembering spreads, soul to soul, frequency to frequency. And yet this remembering doesn't begin in some cosmic revelation. It begins with something much simpler, something much more fragile, your childhood. Because there was a time before the world told you who to be, when you already knew. When your imagination wasn't just playful, it was sacred. When you spoke to trees and they spoke back. When you felt the emotions in a room without anyone saying a word, when you dreamt of other worlds, and no one had yet told you they weren't real. That wasn't fantasy, that wasn't immaturity, that was the truth, unfiltered. As a child, you were still connected, still open, still aligned. And they called it imagination, because they had already forgotten. So they taught you to forget too. They told you ghosts weren't real, even when you felt them watching. They told you your imaginary friend was fake, even though they comforted you more than anyone else. They told you to stop asking questions that had no answers, to stop crying for no reason, to stop being too sensitive. And slowly you did. You stopped seeing, you stopped trusting, you stopped speaking about what you knew, because it wasn't safe, because it wasn't normal, and so you buried it, all of it, the visions, the feelings, the magic, but it didn't go away, it just went dormant, waiting for the day when you'd be strong enough to remember again. And now here you are, feeling things you don't understand, dreaming things you can't explain, questioning things you were once sure of. That's not a breakdown, that's a breakthrough. Your inner child is still alive inside you, holding the blueprint of your soul's truth. And every time you reconnect with that innocence, that wonder, that sensitivity, they hand you another piece of your memory. They remind you that you were never ordinary, that you didn't come here to blend in. You came here to awaken, to pull back the curtain, to bring light to the parts of the world that have been lost in shadow. And you don't do that by becoming someone else. You do it by remembering who you were before the forgetting. So let yourself remember, let yourself feel, let yourself cry without needing a reason, laugh without needing a permission slip, dance without needing a stage, speak without needing approval, love without needing certainty. These are the frequencies of your original self, and as you step back into them, the world begins to change, because you are no longer a product of the system. You are a living portal for the divine. You are the memory they tried to erase, and now that you've found it again, nothing can stop you. There are moments in time, hidden between the hours of your routine, that are more than just passing seconds. They are portals, windows, sacred openings where the boundaries between dimensions thin and your soul has easier access to you. Most people walk right past them, distracted by the noise of daily life, unaware that these moments are vibrating with potential. But once you start remembering who you are, these hidden timings begin to glow with meaning. You start to feel them before you understand them. You wake up at the same time every night, 3:33 a.m., and wonder why. You feel strangely energized during certain moon phases, or deeply introspective during others. You have powerful realizations around your birthday, or your life seems to reset every 7 years. This isn't random, this is sacred timing. And it's not new, it's your soul's original rhythm calling you back into alignment. There's a reason the mystics of every culture paid close attention to time, not clock time, but cosmic time. The ancient Egyptians aligned their rituals with the stars. The Mayans tracked time using sacred calendars more precise than anything modern science has produced. The yogis of India knew which times of day were best for connecting with the divine. Even early Christian mystics would rise before sunrise to pray, not out of tradition, but because they knew that between 3 and 6 in the morning the veil is thinner. This is when the noise of the world is quietest. This is when your intuition is sharpest. This is when your soul has the clearest access to your waking mind. If you've ever woken suddenly at this hour, feeling like something important was just happening, it was. Your soul doesn't operate on a 24-hour schedule. It doesn't care about calendars or deadlines. It communicates through energetic alignment, not appointments. And yet, it does follow rhythms, cycles, phases. When you were born, the planets and stars were in a specific configuration. That configuration is like a cosmic fingerprint, a blueprint for your purpose, your gifts, your timing. Most people never learn how to read it, but it shows up anyway. It shows up in the moments when you feel like something big is about to happen. It shows up in the years when your life suddenly transforms. It shows up in the repeating numbers, the sudden endings, the unexpected beginnings. These are your energetic gateways. Your soul uses them to nudge you into alignment. And when you learn to recognize them, everything accelerates. There's also the matter of place. Just like time, space holds memory. The city you were born in wasn't random. The house you grew up in wasn't random. The countries you feel inexplicably drawn to, also not random. Every place carries a frequency, and your soul chooses specific locations to activate different parts of your memory. That's why sometimes you visit a place and feel like you've been there before. You haven't traveled there, you've returned. You're standing on the very ground where a previous version of you once walked. That familiarity, that comfort, that deep emotional response, it's not fantasy, it's resonance. These places act like mirrors, reflecting parts of you back to yourself that you forgot even existed. And then there are people. Certain individuals appear in your life not by chance, but by design. You might feel an instant connection or an unexplainable tension. Either way, it's because something deeper is at work. These souls carry pieces of your puzzle. Some are here to awaken you, others to challenge you. Some will stay, some will leave, but none are random. They are all coded into your timeline. And when you begin to live with this awareness, when you start seeing your life as a web of meaning instead of a string of accidents, everything transforms. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" You stop seeing events as problems and start seeing them as initiations, because that's what they are. Every difficulty, every heartbreak, every unexpected twist is a part of the curriculum your soul designed to help you remember. And here's the most important part. Remembering isn't a destination. It's not a moment that happens once and stays forever. It's a practice, a relationship, a commitment to wake up every day and choose alignment, to choose truth over comfort, to choose soul over ego. You won't always get it right. You'll forget again. You'll fall back into old patterns. But the difference is, now you'll notice. Now you'll feel the misalignment like a ringing in your bones. Now you'll recognize when you're out of tune. And because of that awareness, you'll come back faster. You'll course correct. You'll begin to live in rhythm with your soul, not in rebellion against it. This is the return. The return to your original self. The self that existed before the world told you who to be. The self that never needed fixing, only remembering. And once this return begins, there's no turning back. Because once you taste the truth of who you are, you can no longer pretend to be less. You can no longer fit into boxes that once defined you. You can no longer betray yourself to keep others comfortable. You become sovereign, free. And that freedom will scare people. It will trigger those still trapped in performance, but it will also inspire. It will awaken. It will radiate. Because your remembering doesn't just heal you, it echoes outward. It ripples through your relationships, your work, your presence. It becomes medicine for everyone who comes near you, not because you try, but because you are. This is why remembering is feared, not by you, but by the systems that rely on your forgetting. Because a human being who remembers is powerful beyond measure. They don't follow blindly. They don't consume unconsciously. They don't compete in games that don't matter. They become a living disruption to the status quo, not through rebellion, but through presence, through love, through sovereignty. That's the paradox. The system fears the awakened, not because they're violent, but because they're free. And that's the invitation now, not to believe something new, but to remember something ancient, not to chase more knowledge, but to reconnect with what your soul already knows. That knowledge is alive in your breath, in your body, in your dreams, in the subtle language of intuition. You don't need more information. You need silence, space, courage. You need to stop trying so hard to be something and simply be who you are. That's the real power. That's the forbidden trick they never wanted you to discover. You are not lost. You are not waiting. You are not broken. You are remembering. And that changes everything.